something that is temporary in nature, at least in terms of the budgetary impacts, then you don't have that security. And so that's what this bill does, Bill C-35. It will enshrine these agreements that have been made with provinces into legislation so that any future government, be it any political party, will have to go through some pretty significant steps in order to remove it. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and I think we're going to stop for question period now.
Yes. So the honourable member will have 5 minutes of questions and comments the next time this matter is before the House. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Vancouver-Grenville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise in the House to honour Ralph Schwartzman, who passed late last year. Ralph was a pillar of Vancouver's Jewish community. A builder for over 70 years, Ralph's contributions to the community were of many construction projects, from the Vancouver Talmud Torah School and Temple Shalom Synagogue in my riding of Vancouver-Granville. Ralph was a kind and honest man, a true mensch. While family, friends, business associates, and community mourn this loss, we celebrate the wonderful and charitable life that he lived. His legacy will indeed live on through the JCC redevelopment, a symbol of our thriving community, a community he was devoted to building. May his memory be a blessing and his kindness a lesson to us all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Madam Speaker, despite BC having abundant renewable resources, 2 mills will be closing in my region, with 300 losing their jobs in Prince George and 200 losing their jobs in Chetwynd. The reason was not a lack of timber, but a lack of access to it. The Prime Minister's commitment to the radical 30 by 30 agenda to protect 30% of lands and 30% of waters by 2030 is needlessly blocking our own access to our own lands and waters. From forestry writer David Elstone, 30% protection of the land base by 2030 is 100% entirely a political move. Making a third of the province into a park is not just bad for the economy, but for the environment as well. And from Jeff Bromley of the United Steelworkers Wood Council, some in the environmental movement have been strategically misleading the public for years with false claims about the forest industry. Unlike the Prime Minister, we Conservatives encourage environmental stewardship and the continued responsible resource development of our natural resources. For our forestry workers and their families, we can and must do both.
The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
January 22nd, the Lunar New Year arrived with firecrackers and confetti. I was fortunate enough to ring in the new year in my riding of Scarborough Agincourt, which is home to one of the largest Chinese populations in Canada. In Chinese culture, the rabbit represents energy, beauty, and tranquility. It is considered the luckiest animal in the zodiac. In Korean lore, the rabbit is quiet, clever, fertile, and prosperous. For the Vietnamese community, 2023 is the year of the cat. The Lunar New Year concludes with the Lantern Festival on February the 5th. I want to wish everyone who celebrates Lunar New Year a very happy and healthy one. In Vietnamese, Chok Mung Nam Moi. In Korean, Sak Hei Bok Mani Bado Seo, and in Chinese, good health and prosperity. Shanti Jan Kan, Gong Hei Fa Choi. Thank you.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, the Bloc today demonstrated alongside the workers of Ocean Group Remorquage, who have been demanding the right to negotiate for several months on an equal footing with their employer. In solidarity with these workers, the Bloc has reiterated its support for anti-scab legislation like the one introduced by my colleague from Thérèse de Blainville. We have also reminded the government of the promise that the Liberal government made during its 2021 campaign, the one that promised the rapid implementation of anti-scab legislation. It's now 2023, and, Madam Speaker, Quebec has had its own legislation since 1977. Canada, once again, is trailing Quebec. let things move forward and let the government introduce its own bill. The Bloc will support any bill that respects the spirit of the workers' demands. Finally, to all workers, to the steel workers and to the union members of HoC Group, the Bloc Quebec is with you. Strength, solidarity, and respect. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, I rise today with great news for my community of Ottawa Centre. Last year, I launched the Downtown Ottawa Revitalization Task Force alongside co-chairs Graham Hussey and Neil Malhotra. Our goal is to reimagine downtown Ottawa to thrive in a post-pandemic future, and to do that, we have convened a table of community leaders, local business representatives, home builders, sustainability experts, and government officials. Together, we're assessing what downtown Ottawa needs to thrive into the future, and now we're looking for ideas as part of our new public consultation. We're asking residents of the Ottawa area or any Canadian interested in how our nation's capital is developed to have their say. Speaker, Canadians can find more information about this consultation on my social media, and I'm so excited to hear their ideas. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity in this city to reimagine our downtown core. Let's not waste it, Speaker, and let's think big. Thank you, merci.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, over 2 years ago, the federal government closed all Canadian border crossings. As COVID restrictions eased, the border began to reopen, but only with limited capacity. As people in Saskatchewan watched the big crossings in Windsor, Coutts, and Douglas fully open, they thought it was only a matter of time before their crossing would resume normal hours of operation. But they're still waiting. The most direct route from Denver, Colorado to Canada is through the port of Montreal, south of Val Marie in Saskatchewan. Denver is a key hub of the United States with market access to all directions. Ranchers, farmers, exporters, and tourism operators in Canada use ports like Montreal to access U.S. markets, while fresh produce from California and Florida are imported back through this vital port. However, Montreal and other nearby crossings in Saskatchewan are closed on the weekends and only open for limited hours during the week. You need to drive over halfway across the province just to find weekend hours. Rural Saskatchewan is once again being punished and forgotten by this government, which leads me to ask, Mr. Speaker, is it negligence or is it just incompetence?
I just want to remind the honourable members that you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly in the House. And just a little reminder, I know we've been away for a short while, and just a little bit to refresh the memory. The honourable member for Mississauga, Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, it is with deep sadness that I rise today as we say goodbye to Hazel McCallion. She was an icon who served as a mentor and friend to many of us, a trailblazer in every sense of the word, a gifted hockey player, a dedicated counselor, Reeve, and a mayor for a remarkable 36 years. Hazel's unwavering commitment to her community, her tireless efforts, and strong political style earned her the name Hurricane Hazel. She's inspired women like me to pursue politics and has left a lasting impact for generations. Last summer, we celebrated the 50th edition of the Bread and Honey Festival in Streetsville. We are all lucky to have been able to celebrate one last time with her. For this memorable event, I, along with colleagues, send our deepest condolences to the McCallion family and all the lives Hazel touched. Her passing is a loss to all of us, and we are grateful for the time we shared with her. May she rest in peace.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On January 10th, Kingston City Council unanimously passed a motion that declared a mental health and addictions crisis in our city. City services are stretched beyond what they can and are mandated to provide to those who are experiencing homelessness, mental health, and addiction challenges. The city's motion specifically requested assistance from the provincial Ontario government to invest in additional healthcare resources, including treatment and rehabilitation beds in Kingston, to support those in need. It further goes on to request the province lead an emergency working group of frontline healthcare and social workers to develop long-term solutions. Our federal government is willing and ready to help provinces and territories deal with the mental health and addictions crises that are happening throughout the country. That is why we established a Ministry of Mental Health and invested, through Budget 2022, $100 million over 3 years to support harm reduction, treatment, and prevention at the community level. I fully support this declaration, and Mr. Speaker, we need all levels of government to work collaboratively together to tackle the mental health and addictions crisis happening throughout our country.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, since this Liberal government took office, violent crime has increased by 32%, i.e. there's been 124,000 more violent crimes under their watch. Who are the primary perpetrators of these crimes? Repeat offenders and drug traffickers of illegal guns. What is the Liberal solution? Remove mandatory minimums and target law-abiding hunters and firearms owners. People like this retired RCMP officer who has 4 handguns that were carried by his grandfather and father during both World Wars. Unfortunately, due to the Liberals' handgun freeze, keeping them in the family is no longer possible. Meanwhile, recent victims of gun violence include a 17-year-old killed in broad daylight and another police officer murdered by a repeat offender out on bail and prohibited from owning a firearm. In an armed robbery this past weekend, regional police chiefs stated, quote, "This violent incident was avoidable. 2 of the arrested in this incident failed to adhere to the conditions of their release on previous charges. This is why we must pursue bail reform," unquote. Considering these disturbing facts, the Liberal government must withdraw their soft on crime Bill C-5, make bail reform a priority, and withdraw Bill C-21.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, I was invited to meet with the students of the Environment Committee at the Cité des Jeunes Secondary School. These students have led an initiative to collect wishes for the environment, to share their ideas on how to better protect our planet. Some wished that unnecessary plastics would be banned. Others wished that there would still be snow in years to come. And finally, many wished that the government would act and listen to their calls for action. On behalf of everyone in Vaudreuil-Soulanges, I would like to congratulate them for their involvement for our environment and our community, and I encourage them to continue to keep making a difference and expressing themselves. I would also like to thank the teachers involved, Ms. Sophie Doyette and Marie-Belle Leclerc-Allais, for their work with the committee and for underlining the importance and relevance of their interventions and their collective work. Together, let's work for a better Vaudreuil-Soulanges, a better Canada, and a better world for us and for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I just want to remind everyone that statements are being made. If I can ask everyone to just maybe take it down a notch so we can hear each other. The Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent Middlesex.
Speaker, after 8 years under this tax and spend Liberal government, Canadians are facing desperate situations. One senior writes me to say that the high price of gas and food has cut his driving to zero and is forcing him to buy food on sale and low quality. Another writes to say their debt has never been over $2,000, but because the government printed money and allowed crazy inflation, their debt is now over $12,000 and growing. The most heartbreaking victim of the Liberals' cost of living crisis is a constituent who writes to say that the bank will foreclose on their home. Their payments have increased to over $1,000 a month thanks to rate hikes. And they also say, and I quote, "I guess it's a good thing we can commit assisted suicide now. That must have been part of the Prime Minister's plans," end quote. Speaker, 8 years of broken Liberal promises and apathy have had a real cost on the lives of people. To all those struggling, don't give up. There is hope. Conservatives are fighting to end 8 blatant years of Liberal incompetence and give you back your freedom and your future.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, everything in this country feels like it's broken. But don't take my word for it. Let's use the words of the Liberals themselves who are confirming this. The member for Yukon called out his government attack on hunters in Bill C-21. The member for Avalon called out his Liberals' carbon tax on home heating. A 25-year Liberal MP from Toronto is so frustrated with her Prime Minister, even she is calling him out publicly. The former Minister of Sports says she was disregarded when it came to stopping abuse in sports. We have the Minister of Heritage now fighting with cabinet colleagues over another botched appointment. And we can't forget the member for Louis Hebert, who called him out for wedging and dividing Canadians when it came to COVID. Mr. Speaker, everything in this country feels broken because this Liberal caucus is broken. If they can't get their act together, the solution is simple. Just step aside, because Conservatives on this side are united and ready to go.
The Honourable Member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, I am honoured to rise in this House to recognise and pay tribute to the Canadian Forces Naval Reserve on the occasion of their centennial. On January 31st, 1923, the Government of Canada created the Royal Canadian Navy Volunteer Reserve. For 100 years, naval reservists have served our country with courage and sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, these citizen sailors have been pillars of their communities, whether training for service at sea or coming to the aid of their neighbors in need. Today, from Victoria to St. John's, 4,100 sailors serve across 24 Naval Reserve divisions. Let us recognize the Naval Reserve and honor their place in our nation's military history and heritage as they celebrate 100 years of service excellence as a vital element of the Royal Canadian Navy and Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, I stand in solidarity with the people of Iran who are demonstrating against a brutal regime. Their courage and resolve is recognized here in Canada, and the residents of Port Moody Coquitlam see you. Iranians are protesting worldwide at great risk to themselves for the human rights of women. Thousands have been arrested, imprisoned, and some have been executed. Farhad Nakahi was arrested at a protest in Shobahar, and Mahya Vahedi was arrested at work. Speaking their names in the House today is a show of my solidarity and sponsorship for their lives. Canada must not tolerate the Iranian government's brutality. New Democrats have asked the Foreign Affairs Committee to look at listing the murderous IRGC as a terrorist entity, and we urge all parties to support our motion. I will continue to work with Iranian Canadians to seek justice for political prisoners. Zan Zadagi Azadi, women, life, freedom.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to talk about a quality that's occasionally lacking in this House, namely genius. Astrophysicist René Doyon was named Scientist of the Year by CBC for his role in the design of the James Webb Space Telescope. This telescope, the most powerful ever launched into space, will revolutionize our knowledge of the universe. It amazes us all with its photos of the most distant galaxies and planets like Earth orbiting stars other than the Sun. All of this is the result of decades of work by René Doyon as Canada's principal investigator in cooperation with NASA and the European Space Agency. This is the second time that a native from the Beauce and a University of Montreal professor has won the Scientist of the Year award. On behalf of the Bloc, I would like to congratulate René Doyon, but especially thank him for allowing us to dream by reopening all the possibilities of the universe. Congratulations.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, Mohsen Shakari was a 23-year-old living in Tehran. In September, he was arrested by the Iranian morality police and charged for waging war against God for protesting. At the trial, he was denied the right to a lawyer, denied the right to an appeal, denied the right to see his family, and sentenced to death. Trials like these have been repeated hundreds of times since then. But they're trials that the Liberal member for Richmond Hill actually called fair and legal. He used those words. There are no fair and legal proceedings against political prisoners in a country that doesn't have an independent judiciary. The IRGC is still allowed to fundraise, organize, and recruit here in Canada. They are regularly let into the country, and they are free to intimidate our own citizens. They have sympathizers in this very government. The Prime Minister didn't mislead Parliament when he himself voted to list the IRGC as terrorists, but he did mislead Canadians by not having the courage to actually do it when he had the chance. Mr. Speaker, it's time for the Liberals to stop defending the IRGC, and it's time to start standing up to them.
The honourable member for Pierre Fond-le-Dollar. Mr. Speaker, 6 years ago on Sunday, 6 men lost their lives in an act of hatred in Sainte-Foy, Quebec. We stood in solidarity with the Muslim community across Quebec. I participated in the service in Montreal. It was freezing cold, but my heart was warmed by seeing Quebecers from all walks of life, most of whom were not from the community directly affected by this terrorist attack, present. In the days following, there was deep thought across Quebec and Canadian society. The media did everything possible to explain who were Quebec and Canadian Muslims. I ask all members of this House, to all members of our society, to remember the solidarity that was shown 6 years ago as we collectively search to fight against Islamophobia today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 8 years, this Prime Minister has doubled our national debt by adding $500 billion of deficit, inflationist deficit. What have we had for this money? Monthly payments for rent and mortgages that have doubled. Seniors are finding it hard to even eat because of this government's inflationist policies that have been the case for the past 8 years. Criminality has gone up by 32% after 8 years of this Prime Minister. But who has won? McKinsey Consultants, they're the real winners. They've received $100 million. Yesterday, I asked 5 times how much money this company has received. The Honourable Minister for Sports. Mr. Speaker, we know that things are unstable right now. Things are difficult for Canadians. The pandemic has affected Canadians. We were here for Canadians. Now we are going through another difficult period with high inflation. We will be here for those who need us the most. We will act responsibly so that our economy can continue to grow with good jobs for Canadians. We'll continue our work.
They say they're going to be there for the people most in need, like the $1,000 an hour consultants over at McKinsey, a company that received over $100 million for work that public servants say was of little or no value. The total amount this government is spending on high-priced consultants, $15 billion. That is $1,000 for every single family in Canada. Wow. No wonder Canadians are eating increasingly at food banks after 8 years of this government. No wonder seniors can't keep the heat on. Why won't they give us an answer? How much did McKinsey get in total?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, and I remember in my time in opposition looking at the member opposite who sat in a government that had a poverty rate of 14.5%. And you know how often they talked about poverty or people in food banks? Never. And in fact, what has happened under this government is that rate has been reduced by 56%. We have lifted literally over 1.5 million people out of poverty. And I would point out that under the worst period of growth since 1946, which his government presided over, that this government in turn has seen more than 1.5 million jobs created since they left office.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, there they go. Telling Canadians, stop all your complaining. You've never had it so good. If you're one of the 1.5 million people eating at a food bank, stop your complaining. You've never had it so good. If you're one of those people going to a food bank seeking help with suicide, which is becoming increasingly common, they tell you you've never had it so good. If you're one of the 35-year-olds living in your parents' basement because this government's policies have doubled rent and doubled mortgage payments, they tell you you've never had it so good. Why? Because they're spending all their time with McKinsey Consultants. How much did those consultants get from taxpayers?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, when the world is going through something incredibly difficult, you have a choice of what you can do. You can look them in the eyes and tell them straight that they're in the most difficult time that humanity has gone through since the Second World War, or you can retweet what's going wrong in the world and make YouTube videos. It's time for serious leadership. And you know what's happened over the last 8 years? every time we put concrete solutions in place, the party opposite has obfuscated. They tried to block on support for dental, on support for rental, on support for childcare, on support for OAS, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And now their second tactic. First, they tell Canadians they've never had it so good. Now they admit that it's miserable, but it's everyone else's fault. The rest of the world did not raise the rent in Canada. Rental rates are set here. We don't import our apartment buildings from Russia. We build them here in Canada. We don't set mortgage rates in Russia. We set them here in Canada. And after $500 billion of inflationary deficits bidding up goods and constant red tape preventing the construction of the homes we need, our young people are stuck in their parents' basements. Why don't they stop blaming everyone else and finally take responsibility for the misery they've caused in 8 years?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite had an opportunity to be in a government and to do something on poverty. They didn't have any targets. They didn't talk about poverty. They didn't talk about homeless shelters. They didn't move those at all. And I've talked about what this government has done. But the IMF is now saying Canada will have the second highest GDP growth in the world. And the reality is that as we work hard to lift Canadians up and do critical things like childcare and dental care, instead of just amplifying anxiety and fear, why won't they be part of the solution? And I would say, Mr. Speaker, they haven't been in this House. All they've done is block and obstruct real solutions.
I just want to direct all the members to look at their whips and seek advice from them in their signals. They're going like this to calm down and not shout out. So I just want to remind everyone, their whip is working very hard, and the deputy whip is too. Listen to them. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Now, their third tactic. First, they say everything's great. Then they say it's terrible, but it's everyone else's fault. Then they say we should stop talking about how miserable people's lives are. He seems to suggest that people are anxious because I'm telling them that they can't afford food. No, their stomachs are telling them that they can't afford food. They seem to think that if I stop talking about the fact seniors in Northern Ontario can't heat their homes because of the carbon tax, that seniors won't notice that they're cold. They seem to think that if I don't talk about the 35-year-old living in his parents' basement, he won't realize that he's living there. Mr. Speaker, why don't they fix the problems instead of telling people to shut up about them?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we are plain and straight about the difficult times that we're going through as a planet. And I would suggest that when the member opposite had the opportunity to suggest, as an example, how people dealt with inflation, he recommended cryptocurrency. This is a party, Mr. Speaker, that at every opportunity is actually not offering any solutions, and in fact ignoring the fact that when they had a chance to act on poverty, when they had a chance to act on creating jobs, they had such a bad record on GDP. There was 14 times in history where there was more growth in a single year than they had in their entire government.
Wow.
The Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. I'd like to repeat myself, the Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. The notwithstanding clause was very much defended by Pierre Elliott Trudeau back in the day. The minister yesterday stated that he has nothing against the notwithstanding clause. He is against its preventative use, but there is no other use than a preventative use. It's like a vaccine. You don't get vaccinated because you're ill. You get vaccinated in order to not be ill, in order to avoid going to the Supreme Court in this case. If it's not preventive, Mr. Speaker, what is it for? The Honourable Minister for Justice. Mr. Speaker, our government has always been clear on its concerns of the preemptive use of the derogation clause by provinces and notwithstanding clauses by the provinces, and we are committed, rather, to defending the rights and freedoms protected by the Charter, a charter that was created to protect minorities throughout Canada. Mr. Speaker, in the dialogue between Parliament and courts, The first word should not be the last. The Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. The Prime Minister made a poor appointment for Quebec, but Ms. El-Gawabi will no doubt have things to say. The Prime Minister knew what he was doing, and it's because the Prime Minister and the Liberals are ready for everything in order to remove any prerogative to from the Assemblée Nationale. And this shelter, this last protection, is the notwithstanding clause. The Prime Minister and his government, are they disavowing Pierre Elliott Trudeau's inherited values? The Honourable Minister for Justice, Mr. Speaker, the Pierre Elliott Trudeau's charter was there to defend the rights and freedoms of individuals, and that's the same thing with the charter drafted by René Lévesque. We are proud of having charters in Canada to protect minorities, Mr. Speaker. The preemptive use of notwithstanding clauses goes against the spirit of these charters and dialogue between Parliament and the courts. As I just said, Mr. Speaker, the first word should not be the last. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The Canadian Armed Forces had to be called into long-term care homes. And what they saw in those homes were horrific conditions. Seniors left for hours in soiled diapers and linens. Seniors crying out for food and water, left dehydrated and hungry. After seeing the report, the Prime Minister said he was sad and frustrated. But 2 years later, there's been no action. When will the Prime Minister legislate standards in long-term care to protect our seniors?
The Honourable Minister for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, as a nurse, I've seen firsthand the challenges that seniors face during the pandemic, including my own community in Brampton, Mr. Speaker. That's why we welcome today the new standards released today by Health Standards Organization and Canadian Standards Association, which are a result of extensive consultations across the country, Mr. Speaker. We've also provided $4 billion to support provinces and territories in their efforts to improve long-term care in their jurisdictions, and we'll continue to work together to ensure that all Canadians continue to live with dignity and respect regardless of where they live. Thank you.
Member for Burnaby South.
Insufficient funding and legislation, and the government has done neither.
Yep.
En 2021, les libéraux ont déclaré.
In 2021, the Liberals stated that a two-speed system would worsen access and healthcare outcomes for us all. And innovation in healthcare has to be done by improving and broadening our public healthcare system today. The same Liberals are ready to letting Daniel Smith and Doug Ford use federal money to further end public health care. The Honourable Member for Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and of course, as a Canadian government and as Minister for Health, we have a particular responsibility making sure that the principles of the Canada Health Act are respected by all in this country. We are very proud for the principle of fair and equitable access to healthcare, a principle that all Prime Ministers and Health Ministers agree upon. We will all work together to make sure that these principles serve workers and patients.
Member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
The price after 8 years of Liberal incompetence, mismanagement, and corruption. Liberal insiders like Mackenzie have never had it so good, with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts for work that government departments are saying they could have done instead. It's just like the WE scandal, and Canadians are worse off than ever with soaring interest rates due to out-of-control Liberal spending and because of 40-year high in food inflation. Can anyone on that side tell us why Liberal crony handouts are more important than lowering the cost of living for everyday Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Speaker, we will soon in this House have an opportunity to come together once again and make life better for hundreds of thousands of Canadians with disabilities. We're about to embark on third reading of C-22, and I expect and I hope that everyone here will understand the severe levels of poverty of our Canadians with disabilities, and we will work together to make life better for them.
The honourable member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Years of Liberal mismanagement leaves a legacy of being the most expensive government with some of the worst outcomes in history. While Liberals help their cronies with millions in handouts, Canadians have never had it so bad. 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals, out of money, accessing charity services. And 2 former Liberal finance ministers agree with the Conservatives. Bill Morneau admitted that the Liberals overspent during the pandemic, and now even former Liberal Finance Minister John Manley is warning Liberals' reckless spending is fueling inflation. So why is the government determined to make Liberal insiders rich off the empty stomachs of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration.
Sometimes the opposition graces us with the good fortune of saying the quiet part out loud. Describing pandemic spending that kept my neighbors fed and a roof over the heads of their children was not overspending. That was essential to protect the well-being of Canadians that live in my communities. The fact that we stepped up to make sure that businesses could keep the lights on and the doors open is something I would do again 100 times out of 100. I see people every day who still have a job because of those measures. At the beginning of the pandemic, the Conservative leader held a press conference to say he would never support those big fat government programs. Thank God we're in government because people are still employed as a result.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
After 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians have doled out $15 billion for consultants, and in return they get chaos at airports, growing immigration backlogs, and 40-year highs in inflation. Our constituents have skipped meals, they've visited food banks in record numbers, and they reel from Liberal inflation-driven interest rate hikes. They've spent Canadian tax dollars on giveaway to well-connected insiders, and they blame everyone else. But after 8 years, there's no one to point fingers at anymore. When will the Prime Minister stop the giveaways to his friends and start working for ordinary Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Conservatives are very quick to point to the government every time they think there's a political opportunity for themselves. What we're focused on doing in the meantime is advancing solutions. Solutions that have put more money in the pocket of low-income renters, which they voted against. Solutions like making sure that kids who come from low-income families can go to the dentist, which they voted against. This has been the pattern since the very day we formed government. When we stopped sending child care checks to millionaires to put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families, they voted against it. When we raised taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could cut them for the middle class, they voted against it. Every step of the way, we've been focused on families. It'd be nice if they finally support one of these measures.
Member for Thornhill.
They brag about the billions spent, but the call is coming from inside of the House. It's been 8 years, and this Prime Minister has doubled the national debt. The price of a house has doubled, and now he's going to triple the carbon tax for the millions of people struggling to pay their now $2,000 rent, their higher mortgage rates, millions using food banks. The Prime Minister has one message for you, and that's that you've never had it so good. It's true for his friends like McKinsey and we and the foodie media firm and their besties who do media training, but it's not true for anyone else. How do they let this happen?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that every time the opposition talks about climate change, which happens very rarely, they never talk about the cost to Canadians. The billions of dollars from Hurricane Fiona, the billions of dollars from atmospheric rivers in BC that are killing people in Canada, Mr. Speaker. They never talk about these costs to Canadians. Well, on this side of the House, we will fight climate change and we will work to support Canadians in this transition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The CEO of Metro has publicly confirmed that food prices will continue to rise in 2023, leaving even more families and seniors resorting to food banks to feed themselves. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, people are so desperate that they are driven to shoplifting. Mr. Speaker, 24 Heures interrogated people on what encouraged people to shoplift. Marlene says, after I pay my rent and utilities, I have less than $80 left to survive half the month. How can this Prime Minister pay Liberal firms $1,000 an hour when Marlene has to break the law to simply feed herself? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we all share the concerns of my colleague with regards to vulnerable Canadians that need a little bit of a boost to make ends meet. What I don't understand is why the Conservatives keep voting against measures that are here to help Quebecers and Canadians throughout the country. They voted against workers' benefits. They voted against the strengthening of our senior benefits. It is important that we continue to be here for Canadians whilst being fiscally responsible. The honourable member from Mégantic-L'Érable. What we're against is thousands of dollars, millions of dollars for Liberal companies. After 8 years, the Prime Minister has stated that he will continue to be incompetent. 80-year contracts to a Liberal firm for consulting services. So, imagine if a government had given a contract of that length in 1943. In the Second World War, there were no computers, no internet, no cell phones. How can the government predict that McKinsey will still be pertinent and useful in 80 years, in 2100? Or is this the Prime Minister's preparations for a golden retirement? The Honourable Minister for Sports. Mrs. Speaker, we're still waiting for solutions from the Conservatives to help Canadians against this difficult time with regards to the increase of interest rates. We know what the Conservative solutions are because we've seen what they've done in the past. Everyone for themselves, cut all the programs. What we are saying on our side is that we will be here for Canadians with the childcare benefit, which allowed 435,000 kids to leave poverty. Together, we'll get through this. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, McKinsey is in a contract with the government until 2100. This government was not able to deal with the passport crisis last spring, now can do forecasts all the way to the year 2100. Pretty impressive. So does that mean that until 2100, the federal government will give contracts to McKinsey without tendering, without taxpayers or their children or their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren or their great-great-grandchildren have their say? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is important to correct the information that is currently being shared. It is not a contract. It's an agreement, a supply agreement. There's a nuance. It's a pre-selection rather than a financial contract when it comes to supply. My apologies. Some people would like to hear your answer from the beginning again. Mr. Speaker, it is important to correct information that has been shared. It's not a contract. It's an agreement. It's a supply agreement, which means that no monetary agreement has been signed. It's a pre-selection. And hundreds of providers already have this agreement. This kind of agreement has existed for years. It allows us to save money and time. The government will continue to maintain the highest standards possible when it comes to transparency and openness and when it comes to financial accountability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member from Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, 2100 is a long way off. I don't know which party will form the government or even if any of these parties will exist, but I can guarantee two things. In 2100, Quebec will be a country. And, Mr. Speaker, the other absolute is that McKinsey is still going to be under contract with Canada. Mr. Speaker, this raises an important question. It doesn't matter which party governs here. It doesn't matter what the voters choose. McKinsey will still be here under contract or an agreement, as the Minister has put it, without any specific mandate. Is that what we want, Mr. Speaker, in a democracy? The Honourable Minister for Heritage. My colleague is right. We don't know what party will be in government in 2100, but it won't be the Bloc Québécois, I can tell you that much. The Bloc Québécois that once again is trying to rile up their base, creating divisions. Do you know why Canada will still be united in 2100? It's because our differences, our strength rather, is bigger than our differences, because we are able to be different whilst living in harmony. And that is Canada's strength, despite what the Bloc Québécois would like to see. The Honourable Member from Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, the government isn't very united with the public service because this contract sends a very bad message. An 80-year contract with McKinsey shows the following, that the government does not recognise the expertise of its own public service today, and that it does not intend to rely on it in the long term either. In other words, the government is telling us that it has no intention of developing in-house expertise in the public service, and it prefers to continue to outsource the state apparatus to the private sector. Mr. Speaker, is this acceptable? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, we've just gone through years of difficulty with the pandemic. Public servants delivered the goods. They've helped us overcome the pandemic, helping SMEs to manage their project. So we will continue to work with the public service to make sure that we can deliver all of our priorities to Canadians, to workers and to companies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is one more sleep until the Prime Minister's good friend Dominic Barton appears before the Government Operations Committee. The Prime Minister has called Dominic Barton an exceptional individual. Dominic Barton's company fueled the opioid crisis, advised Saudi autocrats on dissident crackdowns, and helped Chinese state-owned companies build militarized islands in the South China Sea. So, yes, Dominic Barton certainly is exceptional. But why does the Prime Minister do so much for his ethically deficient friends and so little for struggling Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Public Services.
And as I said yesterday, we are committed to ensuring that government contracts stand up to the highest standards. We ensure value for money, we ensure quality of services for Canadians, and we only contract and procure professional services to complement our professional public services when there are unexpected workload fluctuations and when there's a need for specific expertise. And of course, I will elaborate further when I attend the committee next week.
The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to hear complete non-responses from this government. The Globe and Mail has reported that the federal government contracts accounted for 10% of McKinsey gross revenues. Now, I think McKinsey puts the gross into gross revenue. When Dominic Barton led McKinsey, they developed a plan to supercharge the opioid crisis that included rewarding pharmacists for overdose deaths. That is despicable. Why did the Prime Minister funnel over $100 million into this disgusting company?
Hear, hear, hear. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In all things, the government ensures that the contracts that it enters into are efficacious and get good value for money and ensure that we deliver services to Canadians. The questions that are being posed are fair. We'll get an opportunity in committee to be exhausted and get answers. But understand, Mr. Speaker, that Canada has a reputation around the world for the quality of the contracts that it enters into, and that is absolutely something we're committed to continue to ensure we get value for money for Canadians.
Honourable Member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
After 8 years under this Prime Minister, Canadians have never had it so bad, while Liberal lobbyists and high-priced consultants have had it so good. The amount that this government has paid to McKinsey, formerly led by personal friend of the Prime Minister Dominic Barton, has gradually grown from $50 million to over $100 million. While Canadians are struggling, Liberal insiders are flourishing. Will the Prime Minister tell us the real amount his government has paid to McKinsey?
Yeah. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I have to take exception to this notion that Canadians have never done worse in talking down our economy. I would point out that when the members opposite, the Conservatives, were in power, that the economy had 1.5 million less jobs, that there were over 1.5 million more people that were in poverty, that Canada was at the bottom of the G7 across about every single indicator, and in fact had the worst growth rate in terms of GDP of any government since 1946. Canada next year will be number 2 as projected by the IMF in GDP growth. Mr. Speaker, when they talk down our economy, they should be careful they don't get reflected back to them their own record.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Midnapore.
8 years of this Liberal government, inflation is at a 40-year high. As a result of this government's inflationary spending, this government has handed over $100 million in contracts to McKinsey & Company, with one contract not sunsetting until the year 2100. Wow. So while Canadians have never...
Up for a second. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de traduction?
Is there no interpretation into French at the moment? Has it started again?
Interpretation started again?
Yep.
Elle fonctionne? If I can ask the honourable member for Calgary-Medinipore to start from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, inflation is at a 40-year high as a result of this government's inflationary spending. This government has handed over $100 million in contracts to McKinsey & Company, with one contract not sunsetting until the year 2100. While Canadians have never had it so bad, Liberal insiders and consultants have never had it so good. So why doesn't the Prime Minister and this government just come clean and tell us how much they promised Dominic Barton and McKinsey & Company?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Observing today is an interesting trend where the Conservatives are trying to create a boogeyman to distract from the fact that we're working hard to make sure that families who are struggling get the supports that they need to do well during challenging times. I'm beginning to believe that the Conservatives actually view it to be in their interest to continue to have Canadians experience problems because they never introduce solutions. On this side of the House, we're going to continue to make investments that are going to cut costs for childcare, that are going to reduce costs for dental care, that are going to provide supports to low-income renters. With or without them, we will do what is necessary to make sure that people can feed their kids and keep a roof over their head during difficult times across Canada and around the world.
The honourable member for Hamilton Centre.
Speaker, it's not just the Conservatives who have questions. New Democrats have questions too. And it's not just McKinsey. Because while the Liberals have awarded $160 million to McKinsey with this 100-year deal, companies such as McKinsey and Deloitte, Mr. Speaker, Deloitte, who has 10 times the amount of money, along with KPMG, are raking in billions of taxpayer dollars without accountability or transparency. Canadians deserve to know exactly who is making decisions for this government, how much they're getting paid, and who in this Liberal government are they connected to. Will this government commit to extending their review to include all of their outsourcing contracts?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as the member well knows, Canada has a reputation around the world as having the highest degree of excellence in the way that it conducts its business and contracts. That is something that we are deeply proud of. I understand that in opposition that you want to foment issues, but I say there is an excellent opportunity in committee to ask these questions directly, and if members want to have real answers, then there'll be the opportunity for mature, reasonable discussions at that period of time. But talking down the way in which we conduct contracts does not behoove anybody.
Honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Ukraine, Iran, Haiti, and Myanmar deserve our support. This government constantly pats themselves on the back for adding individuals to the sanctions list, but yesterday we learned that this government has only seized one asset in 6 months. Wow. One asset. The Liberals claim sanctions are a key piece of our foreign response, but there is no enforcement, there is no investigation, and there is almost no seizing of assets. When will the Liberals stop the political theater and start getting serious on our sanctions regime?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
I would like to thank my colleague for a very important question. Indeed, we've imposed extremely strong sanctions against Russian oligarchs, Belarusian oligarchs, Haiti elite members, as well as Iranians. And what we want to do is to make sure that now we implement the new legislation that we have passed, which will allow us not only to seize assets, but to forfeit them. I look forward to working with her on this very important duty that we have. We're the first country in the world doing this, and we will lead. Thank you.
Honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has highlighted long-standing and systemic challenges in Canada's long-term care system. Can the Minister of Seniors please update this House on how this government is ensuring that seniors have access to safe, reliable, and high-quality care in our long-term care homes across this country? Thank you.
Minister for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, seniors deserve the best quality of care rooted in dignity and respect regardless of where they live. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we welcome today the resident center standards released by HSO and CSA, which will make a tremendous tremendous difference in the quality of care seniors receive in long-term care homes. And I want to take a moment, Mr. Speaker, to thank both organizations for the extensive consultations that they've done with Canadians, with seniors, with healthcare workers, with caregivers, Mr. Speaker, in creating these standards. And we'll continue to work with provinces and territories in supporting in their efforts to support long-term care homes in their jurisdictions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Time and time again, we see Liberal cabinet ministers breaking ethics laws to help their friends and Liberal insiders. The Liberals will funnel money and lucrative contracts to them. They'll take illegal vacations. They'll even interfere in the criminal prosecution to help out their friends. And after 8 years under this Prime Minister, well, Canadians have never had it so bad. Liberal insiders, friends, and high-priced consultants have never had it so good. So when will they stop the corruption and start putting the needs of Canadians first?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, saying that Canadians have never had it worse is an absolutely ludicrous statement. There have been all kinds of instances in history where Canadians have faced hard times and dealt with difficult situations, whether or not it was in great wars or in difficult economic storms that took the world. Canadians rose to those occasions and met them with strength and determination to build a stronger future thereafter. And the notion, as Canadians are facing anxiety as they're looking at global tumult, that they should think that they are the worst position they've ever been is just simply irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, throughout history and up until this point, governments were there for their people when they were facing hard times, but not these Liberals. They're there for insiders. The Prime Minister who helped his buddies get off criminal charges. The Prime Minister who took an illegal vacation. The Intergovernmental Affairs Minister who gave lucrative contracts to family members. And the Prime Minister's hand-picked Finance Minister who tried to give $500 million to we, and the Trade Minister who, of course, just gave tens of thousands of dollars to her bestie. Canadians are lined up at food banks. Liberal insiders are lined up to get rich. What's it going to take for one of these corrupt ministers to resign?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that we all watch the language that we use, and I'd be interested to see if the member opposite would use a term like that outside of the chamber. This chamber should be met with the same decorum inside as out. And Mr. Speaker, the party opposite had the opportunity for 10 years to care about the issues that they're now talking about. And I would ask them, if they said they were there, where were they for that 1.5 million Canadians who now have jobs that didn't under their government? Where were they for over 1 million individuals who were in poverty and who were suffering when they were in government and never talked about poverty, Mr. Speaker? It's a little bit rich, and I think they should reflect on their rhetoric.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Liberals spent $6.7 million for just 10 people to stay at a Calgary airport hotel. That's $670,000 a person. There's no justification for this. COVID quarantine restrictions were eased long before this time. $670,000 could have bought a beautiful home in Calgary, a dream after eight years that's out of reach for so many people precisely because of Liberal waste like this. So 2 questions. How many other hotels did this happen at? And has anybody been fired for this waste?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all very mindful of the terrible pain and the large number of deaths and the even larger number of hospitalizations that we have seen in Canada over COVID-19. That's why our primary responsibility has been and remains to protect the safety and the health of Canadians, including the tens of thousands of people who had to access the designated quarantine facilities. Because of these measures and vaccination, in addition, we have saved together, Mr. Speaker, tens of thousands of lives and tens of billions of dollars in economic cost.
I just want to remind the honourable members how it works. You ask a question and you get an answer. You don't continue. Order. You don't continue to ask questions while the question is being answered. I just want to remind everyone that's how it works. It's making it very difficult to hear both sides. We hear one side very well, but the other side makes it very difficult. The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox, and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians have never had it so bad, while Liberal lobbyists have never had it so good. Yet another lucrative government contract was handed out by the Liberal Minister of Diversity to line the pockets of insiders. This is insulting to Canadians, and it has to stop. Mr. Speaker, excuses do not pay the bills. How can this continue to happen without any consequence? Will the minister do the only honourable option he has left and pay the money back?
Yeah. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I would ask what the member opposite says when they say that Canadians have never had it so bad. What would they say to Canadians who for the first time are having universal child care, seeing their costs cut in half and it's going to be $10 a day? What would they say to those who have children, who are for the first time going to be able to make sure that they have dental care for every single child across the country? What would they say to the seniors who they cut off, raising the age to 67, who now are collecting it at 65? What would they say to the 1.5 million people who have a job now that didn't when they were in power, Mr. Speaker?
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, finally, on February 7th, the First Ministers will meet in order to increase the health transfers. That wasn't a foregone conclusion. As late as mid-November, the Minister of Health was calling this request futile. But after years of insistence from Quebec, the provinces, and the Bloc Québécois, Ottawa is finally acknowledging the crisis in our hospitals. Quebec and the provinces keep saying that the federal government needs to cover 35% of costs. The meeting is in 1 week. Will the minister finally commit to meeting their demands? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is an important question. What all health ministers in Canada, including myself, are committed to is to continue working together to take care of the health of Canadians and workers in Canada. We've all been through some very difficult times in recent years. There are major challenges coming up in coming years due to the aging of the population, the cost of drugs, and all sorts of other challenges such as the health workforce. We will continue to work collaboratively together. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, for 28 months, the federal government has known about the financial needs of the health system, but it's still dragging its feet. We don't need a working meeting on February 7th. We need an agreement. Today, 20,000 Quebecers are waiting for a surgery for over a year. And in oncology, 3 to 4 weeks of delay can increase mortality by 6 to 8%. Mortality, Mr. Speaker. And yet these Quebecers have been waiting for more than a year. When will this government finally understand that increasing the health transfers is a matter of critical importance? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. As my colleague, the Minister for Health, said, this is something that is very concerning to Canadians, and we share that concern. We share it with Quebecers as well. We have had major meetings with ministers of health and premiers throughout the country. Tonight, I will be meeting with the Premier of Nova Scotia. Tomorrow, the Premier of British Columbia. These are important conversations. We have always said that we are ready to increase financial support to the provinces as long as we ensure that we get the results that Canadians expect. That's exactly what we'll do. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, despite committing a violent sexual assault, Jonathan Gravel avoided prison after 9 years of procedure, and instead he was sentenced to a suspended sentence, 20 months in the community. Why? Because this Prime Minister, with the help of the Bloc Québécois, adopted Bill C-5. After the sentence was handed down, the Crown Prosecutor Alexis Tinel said the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice should be held to account when it comes to victims of sexual assault. Does the Prime Minister now realize that Bill C-5 was a monumental mistake? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, we firmly believe that all victims of sexual assault deserve a justice system that treats them with dignity and respect. I would like to recognize the resilience of these victims. We understand the devastating impact of sexual assault on victims. Serious crimes merit serious consequences, and my colleague knows very well that I cannot speak to a particular case, especially because the Quebec court's decision might be appealed. We are waiting for the decision of the Quebec courts and organizations. The honourable member. Well, I would like to tell the minister that until November, a judge could not decide to sentence someone to home arrest for a serious sexual assault. But now, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, that option exists. The Crown prosecutor also said, what is the message being sent to victims of sexual assault? I feel that we're going backward. We're going to allow suspended sentences for perpetrators of sexual assault. Someone needs to be held to account. Why does the Prime Minister prefer to help perpetrators of sexual assault instead of increasing women's security? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, what my honourable colleague is saying is entirely false. Our government has acted to protect victims of sexual assault, to ensure that they be treated with dignity and respect. For example, with Bill C-3, new judges appointed by the federal government need to undergo training on sexual assault. And our government has brought in substantial reforms to sexual assault law with former Bill C-51, one of the most progressive pieces of legislation in the world. We will continue to protect victims of sexual assault. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of Liberal incompetence, the government is now targeting law-abiding hunters and farmers in its fight against violent crime, but these violent crimes are committed with illegal weapons due to weapons smuggling and organized crime. The Liberal government will not be able to fix this major security problem in this way. When will the government stop targeting law-abiding hunters and farmers? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we promised Canadians that we would take action on armed violence. Our plan is to invest nearly $500 million to end weapons smuggling at the border, address the root causes of weapons violence, firearms violence in communities, and to introduce legislation that would favor responsible use of firearms, specifically C-21. And I hope that the Conservatives will support these investments and support these extremely sensible pieces of legislation. The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre. Mr. Speaker, for nearly a year now, Ukrainians have been courageously defending their homeland from Russia's unjustified war. Recently, I welcomed the UK Foreign Secretary in Toronto so that he could meet with members of our Ukrainian-Canadian community. That visit showed that Canada, in partnership with our allies, strongly stands with the Ukrainian people. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs tell this House about the measures that she has taken to punish Putin and his regime's egregious actions? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'd like to thank my colleague for Etobicoke Centre for his excellent question and his excellent French as well. I met with my British counterpart in Toronto a few weeks ago, and with our allies, we will ensure that Russian actions be punished. We have already launched solid sanctions against more than 2,000 Russians and Belarusians who are close to the Putin regime. We've also announced heavy artillery to be sent to Ukraine, and we will continue to do more to help. Thank you.
For Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, violent crime is rising because of the actions of this Liberal government. Under 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canada has become a more dangerous place. Police are putting the blame on Liberal Bill C-75 that mandated judges to grant bail to dangerous repeat offenders with minimal conditions. The consequences of this have been fatal. When will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility for his failure to protect Canadians and apologize to the victims of his reckless legislation?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Speaker, Canadians deserve to be and to feel safe. We all have a role to play in protecting our communities. Mr. Speaker, the laws on bail are clear. Detaining an accused person is justified only if it is necessary to protect the safety of the public. As my colleague knows, Mr. Speaker, provinces and territories, and of course police forces, are also responsible for the enforcement of bail conditions. And we, Mr. Speaker, are providing resources to support them. We remain open to good ideas and proposals from our provincial and territorial counterparts and the opposition to reforming our bail system, including other parts of the criminal justice regime.
For Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's not good enough. We have police officers dying on the front lines over every day in this country. Now, police are demanding that this Prime Minister take action to keep dangerous repeat offenders off our streets. But instead, he has decided to punish law-abiding firearms owners by taking away their hunting rifles. After 8 years of failure, this Prime Minister is desperate to distract Canadians with his divisive and flawed hunting gun ban. When will he stop attacking law-abiding firearms owners and start protecting Canadians from dangerous repeat offenders?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
My colleague knows, and I hope all members will have seen, this government is engaging with hunters, with trappers, with First Nations and Indigenous groups to make sure that their experiences are woven into the good work that we are doing under Bill C-21, which of course is to target those guns which have been used in mass killings. When you couple that with the work that we are doing to stop illegal smuggling at the border, $450 million. Mr. Speaker, what did the Conservatives do? They voted against. When you couple that with the work that we are doing to prevent gun crime, a $250 million Building Safer Communities Fund, what did the Conservatives do? They voted against. Mr. Speaker, look beyond the words, look at their actions. They need to reverse their course and support this government's work to keeping Canadians safe. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Beijing's military is threatening Taiwan and harassing neighbors from India to Japan. Beijing's military has a university, the National University of Defense Technology, whose motto is, quote, strengthen the armed forces, end quote. That's why this university was blacklisted by the Obama administration in 2015. The minister's guidelines on Canada's research and national security clearly aren't working because the government continues to fund university partnerships with this university. So when will the minister protect this country's national security and that of our closest allies, issue a policy directive to ban the funding of university partnerships with this university?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
We've been clear in the Indo-Pacific strategy. When it comes to China, we need to be eyes wide open, and that's why we need to make sure that our national security is always protected. That is why the Minister of Innovation is working on it, and not only that, we will be working with university, with provinces and territories to make sure that that national security lens is imposed at all times. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, Canada signed the Statement on International Public Support for the Clean Energy Transition, ending new support for the international, unabated fossil fuel energy sector by the end of 2022. In December, our government announced the Government of Canada's implementation of this commitment with the release of the policy guidelines. Can the Minister of Environment and Climate Change provide an update to the House on the implementation of this commitment?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for her question and the important work that she's doing on the Environment Committee on their fossil fuel subsidies study. The implementation of this commitment was widely received across the country, and many environmental organizations, including Environmental Defence, applauded the announcement. By ending new direct public support for the international unabated fossil fuel energy sector, Canada will ensure its investment abroad are aligned with its domestic and international climate goals, which means more investment in clean energy and renewables.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bravo. The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
The Wabano family of Peawanuck lost a beautiful child in a house fire this weekend, and we mourn with them and grieve with the 10 people who have been left homeless. In 2021, I wrote to this minister warning about the lack of fire protection for the Winnis Cree. That warning was ignored, and now a child is dead. It is unconscionable that any community in this country is left without basic fire protection. So to the minister, simple question. Will she stand today and promise to commit to build a fire hall and give the emergency resource support for the people of Peawanuck so they can live in safety?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. Mr. Speaker, my deepest condolences to the family and the entire community for the loss of a young girl due to a fire incident in Peawanuck. Minister Haidu spoke with Chief Hunter on Sunday to express her condolences and confirm that Indigenous services will be able to coordinate supports for this particular community. We will provide more updates as more information can be confirmed, and HoC officials continue their discussions with the community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I just want to remind all the members that when we're referring to someone, refer to them by their title or by their writing, but not by their proper name. And I understand that it's emotional and it's very difficult, but we still have to try to maintain the decorum in the chamber. The Honourable Member for Churchill, Kiiwetinoong-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, the rich are getting richer while everyone else is losing out, says a recent Oxfam report. In Canada, the rich and powerful are making record profits while working people and people on fixed incomes fall further behind. This didn't just happen. Liberals are refusing to make the rich pay their fair share. And despite conservative rhetoric, they're keen to let the ultra-rich off the hook, too. One thing is clear, Liberal, Tory, same old story. So it's time for a windfall tax on oil and gas, time to increase the corporate tax rate, time to go after tax cheats in our country. It's time to step up for working people and people on fixed incomes. Will the Liberals step up?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, Deputy Leader, it's important to everyone in this chamber that everyone pays their fair share of taxes. That's why we decrease taxes for the middle class by increasing them for the top 1%. We actually introduced a 15% recovery dividend to banks and insurance companies. That's actually going to bring in about $4 billion worth of income. And we put in place a permanent 1.5% tax on profits over $100 million. This has allowed us to make life more affordable for Canadians. It's also allowed us to lower taxes for small businesses.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have.
That's all the time we have.
A number of point of orders. We'll take them in order. I have the Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre who will be getting up first.
Mr. Speaker, after consultation with the parties in the House, if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That given the rise of far-right and associated violent extremism led to the attempted insurrection in the United States, the House condemns recent comments made by Fox News personality Tucker Carlson in which he suggests U.S. armed forces liberate Canada from the current Prime Minister.
All those opposed to the Honourable Member moving the motion will please say nay. Nay, I'm afraid we don't have unanimous consent. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise on a point of order to draw your attention to...
One moment, please. Order! Order! I have to be able to hear the point of order to determine whether it is a point of order or what the actions are. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I rise on a point of order to draw your attention to a procedural matter relating to question number Q974 that I submitted on November 4th, 2022. For the sake of time, Speaker, I'll spare reading the text of the question into the record for you. But my point of order relates to a passage found on page 523 of Boss and Gagnon, which states, while oral questions are posed without notice on matters considered to be of an urgent nature, written questions are placed on the order paper after due notice, with the intent of seeking from the Ministry detailed, lengthy, or technical information related to public affairs. Members may request that the Ministry respond within 45 calendar days, generally by adding a sentence to that effect, either before or after the text of the question, or by so indicating to the clerk when submitting that question. Now, in Standing Order 39.5b, it states, if such a question remains unanswered, the keyword being unanswered, at the expiry of said period of 45 days, the matter of the failure of the Minister to respond shall be deemed referred to the appropriate standing committee. Within 5 sitting days of such a referral, the chair of the committee shall convene a meeting of the committee to consider the matter of the failure of the Ministry to respond. I indicated my desire to have the question answered in 45 days, and at this point, the question cannot be legitimately considered answered. To date, the government has failed to provide any answer on the substance of key aspects of my question. Due to this, I would argue, Mr. Speaker, that per the standing orders, after 45 days, my question remains unanswered and should be deemed to not have a response. Speaker, before Section 5B of Standing Order 39 came into effect in 2001, governments routinely ignored the 45-day deadline to answer questions. Following the adoption of this rule, government began to respect the 45-day deadline. However, it appears that this government has found a way to circumvent this rule to thwart the intended protection offered by Standing Order 39.5b. Your rulings have established that access to information from the government is a fundamental privilege of a parliamentarian. It's also a critical aspect of the functioning of our system of democracy. When the government flaunts its responsibility to provide this information, the system failed. And this is why, in a related matter, many members of the press gallery are raising concerns about the breakdown of the access to information system request. But back to the matter at hand at this place. My point of order simply asks you to rule that when the government substantively ignores the substance of an order paper question, it should be considered to be a failure to answer for the purposes of Standing Order 39.5b. That way, the government's refusal to answer a written question can be referred to a committee for review. Thank you.
I want to thank the honourable member for her point of order, and we'll look into it and come back. Yes, the honourable member for South Surrey White Rock is rising on a point of order.
The member from Calgary-Mindapor's intervention today, there was a translation problem, and you, as Speaker, asked her to start again. And when you did that, the member for Timmins James Bay yelled out for us to hear way down here in the House, "Make it more comprehensible this time." My point of order, Mr. Speaker, is that this member from Timmins James Bay should apologize to the member for Calgary-Mindapore. It is time that men in this place stop shouting down women who have a strong and articulate point to make.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I'd also like to do is remind all members to stop shouting down each other during question period or during a debate. And that's something that everyone should take a lesson from. Thank you for bringing that up. Orders of the day.
Government orders resuming debate on second reading of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and child care in Canada.
Now we have the parliamentary secretary to the government House Leader, who has 5 minutes remaining as far as questions and comments. Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really enjoyed the comments from my colleague. And the question I have for him is that if he'll recall, in the last federal election, there was 338 Conservative candidates that went around espousing what the former leader of the Conservative Party said, and that was that he did not support. He would rip up a national child care agreement as we were proposing. Can he provide his thoughts in terms of what many might see that as a bit of hypocrisy?